The needle slipped through Zelda Harmon's fingertip for the third time that evening, and she bit back a curse that would have made her late mother faint, watching a crimson bead bloom against the calico fabric she had been trying to salvage. Globe, Arizona in 1883 was not kind to women alone, and Zelda had learned that lesson the hard way when her father died 6 months ago, leaving her nothing but debts and a one-room shack on the edge of town that leaked when the summer rains came. She sucked the blood from her finger and held the shirt up to the lamplight, examining her stitches with a critical eye that had been honed by necessity. Mrs. Patterson would pay her 15 cents for mending this shirt, and another 20 for the trousers she had finished that morning. 35 cents would buy flour and maybe some beans, enough to keep her going another few days until she could find more work. The pile of clothes beside her chair was pathetically small, just 3 more items that would earn her maybe another quarter if she was lucky. The knock on her door came just as she was threading her needle again, and Zelda's heart jumped into her throat. Visitors after dark meant nothing good, not in a mining town where men outnumbered women 20-1, and respectable women stayed locked behind their doors. She set down her mending and reached for the old rifle her father had left, checking that it was loaded before she approached the door. "Who is it?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Name's Owen Jameson, madam. I'm looking for the seamstress. Got some work if you're willing." Zelda hesitated, her hand on the door latch. The voice sounded young, polite even, but she had learned not to trust politeness. "It's late, mister. Come back in the morning." There was a pause, then the sound of boots shifting on her wooden steps. "Yes, madam. I apologize for the hour. It's just that I heard you were struggling for work, and I thought maybe we could help each other out. But you're right, it's late. I'll come back at a decent hour." Something in the resignation of his voice made Zelda crack the door open, keeping the rifle ready. The man standing on her porch was younger than she expected, maybe 25 at most, with dark hair that curled at his collar and eyes that reflected the lamplight from inside her shack. He wore dusty trail clothes and a battered hat that he pulled from his head when he saw her, revealing more of a face that was tanned dark from the sun and marked with a few days' worth of stubble. "I really do have work," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "And I promise, I mean no disrespect coming here at this hour. I just rode in from the Circle J ranch and heard in town that you do mending. I've got a proposition that might benefit us both, but if you'd rather I come back tomorrow, I understand completely." Zelda studied him, her seamstress eye taking in the worn state of his clothes, the careful way he held himself, the genuine apology in his expression. Against her better judgment, she lowered the rifle slightly. "What kind of proposition?" Owen Jameson's face broke into a smile that transformed him from merely pleasant-looking to genuinely handsome. "Well, madam, the thing is, I work at one of the biggest cattle operations in the territory. We've got 36 men out at the Circle J, and not a one of them knows how to properly mend a shirt or darn a sock. We've been riding into Globe every few weeks to drop off our things with Mrs. Chen at the boarding house, but she just told us yesterday that she's getting too old for it and her eyes aren't what they used to be. She mentioned there was a young woman on the edge of town who did beautiful work, but was having trouble getting enough of it. Mrs. Chen said that." Zelda felt warmth spread through her chest. She had helped the elderly Chinese woman once, refusing payment, and apparently the kindness had not been forgotten. "She did, and she said you were honest and hardworking and that I should bring you all our business." Owen shifted the bundle he was carrying, and Zelda noticed for the first time the enormous sack slung over his shoulder. "Now, I know 36 cowboys generate a powerful amount of mending, and I won't lie to you, madam, we're hard on our clothes. But we pay fair, and we pay on time, and if you're willing to take on the work, I'll make sure every man at the Circle J brings his mending to you and no one else." Zelda's mind raced, calculating. 36 men, even if they each only needed 1 or 2 items mended per month. That was easily 10 times the work she currently had. It would mean long hours, but it would also mean security, a steady income that could help her catch up on her father's debts and maybe even save a little for the winter. "What's the pay?" she asked, trying to keep her voice businesslike. "What do you charge now?" "Depends on the work. Simple mending, 5 to 10 cents per item. Major repairs up to a quarter." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "What if I guarantee you $5 a week, paid every Saturday, regardless of how much or how little work there is? And if there's more work than that would cover, we pay extra. That way you have steady income, and we have someone reliable who'll make sure we don't go around looking like a bunch of ragamuffins." $5 a week. Zelda's breath caught. That was more than she had made in the last month combined. It was enough to pay her rent, buy food, maybe even afford fabric for a new dress. It was enough to live like a human being instead of barely surviving. "Why?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Why would you offer that much?" Owen's expression grew serious. "Because Mrs. Chen also told me your story about your father passing and leaving you alone. Because I know what it's like to struggle, and because the Circle J can afford it. We're not one of those operations that pinches every penny until it screams. Mr. Jacobson, the owner, he believes in treating people right, and that extends to the people who work for us, even indirectly." He paused, then added more quietly, "And because I think everyone deserves a fair chance, especially folks who are willing to work hard for it." Zelda found herself lowering the rifle completely, something in his earnestness breaking through her defenses. "When would I start?" "Tonight, if you're willing to take this first load." Owen hefted the sack. "This is just my things and a few items from the other boys who live in the main bunkhouse. Once word spreads that we found someone, you'll get more. I can bring new loads every few days and pick up the finished work." He hesitated, then added, "And if you ever need anything, supplies or help with something around your place, you just let me know. Part of the arrangement." It was too good to be true, and Zelda's instincts screamed at her to be cautious. But her empty money tin and the gnawing hunger in her belly screamed louder. She opened the door fully and stepped back. "Bring it in. I'll start tonight." Owen's smile returned as he carried the heavy sack inside, setting it down gently by her mending chair. Up close, Zelda realized he was taller than she had thought, probably 6 feet, with broad shoulders that came from real work rather than just natural build. He pulled a small leather pouch from his pocket and counted out $5 silver onto her table. "First week's pay in advance," he said. "Mr. Jacobson always says you can tell a man's character by how he treats people when he doesn't have to. I figure the same applies to business arrangements. This way you know we're serious, and you can buy whatever supplies you need." Zelda stared at the coins, more money than she had seen in one place in months. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached out to touch them, half expecting them to vanish like a desert mirage. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll do good work, which Mrs. Chen already promised me you would, and that you'll be here when I come back on Saturday to check on progress." Owen settled his hat back on his head. "I should let you get to it. Those top items are mine, so start with those if you like. The blue shirt needs buttons replaced, and the trousers have a tear in the knee. Nothing too complicated." He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "I should mention, Miss Harmon, that some of the boys at the Circle J can be a little rough around the edges, but they're good men at heart. If any of them give you trouble or make you uncomfortable when they bring their mending, you tell me immediately." Mr. Jacobson won't tolerate disrespect toward women, and neither will I." "Thank you," Zelda managed, still trying to process the sudden turn her fortune had taken. "I appreciate that, Mr. Jameson." "Owen," he corrected with another one of those transformative smiles. "We'll be seeing a lot of each other if this arrangement works out, so we might as well be on friendly terms. And may I call you Zelda? Mrs. Chen mentioned your given name." "Yes, that's fine." She walked him to the door, clutching the rifle more out of habit now than fear. "I'll have your things ready by Saturday. No rush. Good work takes time." He tipped his hat to her and stepped out into the night, his boots thudding on the wooden steps. "Good night, Zelda. Sleep well." After he left, Zelda locked the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. She looked at the coins on her table, at the sack of Mending by her chair, and felt something she had not experienced in 6 months. Hope. She worked until nearly midnight, her fingers flying over Owen's blue shirt, replacing the missing buttons with new ones from her precious button tin, and reinforcing the seams that had started to pull apart. The fabric was good quality, better than most cowboys wore, and she found herself taking extra care with each stitch, wanting to prove that his faith in her was not misplaced. The trousers were more challenging, with a ragged tear across one knee that required her to cut and fit a patch. She selected a piece of canvas from her scrap pile, choosing one that was close in color to the original fabric, and spent an hour carefully stitching it in place with tiny, invisible stitches that would hold up to hard wear. When she finally held the trousers up to inspect her work, she felt a surge of pride. The patch was nearly invisible, and the repair was stronger than the original fabric had been. She moved on to the other items in the sack, finding shirts that needed buttons, socks that needed darning, and one vest that was missing half its lining. Each piece told a story of hard work and long days, and Zelda found herself wondering about the men who wore these clothes, about Owen Jameson in particular. He had not looked at her the way most men in Globe did, with that mixture of pity and speculation that made her skin crawl. His gaze had been direct but respectful, and his concern for her welfare had seemed genuine rather than calculated. She had learned to be suspicious of kindness after her father died, when supposed friends had vanished like smoke and creditors had appeared like vultures, but something about Owen made her want to trust him. The lamp was burning low when she finally set aside her needle and stretched her cramped fingers. She had finished 5 items, and the pile beside her chair still held at least 20 more. It would take her the better part of a week to get through everything, but for the first time in months, she had work that would actually pay her bills. She counted the silver dollars again before hiding them in the flour tin, keeping out one to take to the general store in the morning. She would need more thread, some better needles, and maybe some leather patches for the heavier items. The thought of walking into the store with money in her pocket, of being able to buy what she needed without having to ask for credit, made her throat tighten with emotion. Sleep came easier that night than it had in weeks. Owen returned on Wednesday, riding in on a dusty buckskin horse and leading a pack mule loaded with more bundles. Zelda heard the hoofbeats and looked out her window to see him dismounting, and despite herself, her heart gave a little skip. She set down the shirt she was mending and went to open the door before he could knock. "Morning," Owen called, tying his horse to the rail. "I brought reinforcements. Hope you don't mind." Zelda stepped out onto the porch, shading her eyes against the bright Arizona sun. "How many reinforcements are we talking about?" "About 15 men's worth." He grinned at her expression. "Word spread fast once the boys saw the work you did on my clothes. They're all fighting to get in line. I had to promise I'd bring their things first." He carried the bundles inside, and Zelda counted 6 large sacks this time, Her small shack was starting to look like a dry goods store. "This is going to take me more than a week. I know. That's why I brought you this." Owen pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "It's a list of each man's items and what needs doing. That way you can keep track of what belongs to who, and you can prioritize the urgent repairs. And I talked to Mr. Jacobson. He said to tell you that if you need help, his daughter Emma sometimes comes into town and she's handy with a needle. She'd be willing to assist if you want to split the work." Zelda took the list, impressed by the neat handwriting and the detailed descriptions. "You wrote all this?" "I did. Figured it would make things easier for both of us." Owen pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "I also wanted to ask if there's anything you need. The boys noticed you've got some loose boards on your porch, and a couple of them are pretty handy with a hammer. They'd be happy to fix it up in exchange for you moving their mending to the top of the pile." She looked at him in surprise. "They'd do that. Cowboys aren't all bad, you know. Most of us were raised to help where we can, especially when it comes to ladies living alone." His expression grew more serious. "I know your situation hasn't been easy, Zelda. People in town talk, and not always kindly. But out at the Circle J, we judge folks by their work and their character, not by gossip. You've already proven you do excellent work. My shirts look better than they did when they were new." Warmth spread through Zelda's chest, and she realized she was smiling. "Tell your friends I'd appreciate the help with the porch, and thank them for me." "I will." Owen settled his hat back on and moved toward the door, then hesitated. "Would it be too forward of me to ask if you'd had breakfast? I passed by the hotel and they're serving hot cakes and bacon." "I'd be honored to buy you a meal if you're willing to take a break from your work." Zelda's first instinct was to refuse. Ladies did not go to hotel dining rooms with cowboys they barely knew, not if they wanted to maintain any shred of reputation. But then again, her reputation in Globe was already suspect simply by virtue of being young, unmarried, and living alone. And the thought of hot cakes, of a real meal she did not have to cook herself over her temperamental stove, was almost irresistible. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. "Let me get my shawl." The hotel dining room was half full when they arrived, mostly miners eating before their shifts and a few merchants taking their mid-morning break. Zelda felt eyes turn toward them as Owen held her chair, and she heard the whispers start, but Owen seemed oblivious to the attention. He ordered for both of them with easy confidence, asking for the hot cakes and bacon, plus coffee and fried eggs. "You eat like this every morning?" Zelda asked, trying not to stare when the enormous plates arrived. "When I'm in town, sometimes. Out at the ranch, we usually make do with whatever Cookie throws together, and that's hit or miss depending on his mood." Owen cut into his stack of hot cakes with enthusiasm. "Some days it's decent, some days you wonder if he's trying to poison us, but we survive." Zelda took a bite of her own breakfast and nearly moaned. She had not eaten this well since before her father got sick. "This is wonderful." "Good." Owen watched her eat with what looked like satisfaction. "You're too thin, if you don't mind me saying. A person can't work hard on an empty stomach." She should have been offended, but the concern in his voice was too genuine to dismiss. "It's been a difficult few months." "I imagine so." He was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "Mrs. Chen mentioned your father had some debts when he passed. If the work we're bringing you isn't enough to help with that, I might know some other opportunities. Mr. Jacobson's wife is always looking for help with various things, and she pays well." "The work is more than enough," Zelda assured him quickly. "I can't thank you enough for bringing it to me, Owen. You probably saved my life, or at least saved me from having to make some very difficult choices." His jaw tightened slightly. "This town should take better care of its own. A woman alone shouldn't have to struggle the way you have." "That's a kind thought, but the world doesn't work that way. Zelda set down her fork and met his eyes. Why are you doing this? And please don't just say it's because Mrs. Chen recommended me. You barely know me, yet you're going out of your way to help. What's in it for you? Owen was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and honest. My mother was widowed when I was 12. My father was killed in a mining accident, and overnight we went from comfortable to desperate. People we thought were friends disappeared, and the town we'd lived in for years turned its back on us. My mother tried to make ends meet taking in laundry and mending, but it was never enough. We nearly starved that first winter. He looked up at her, and Zelda saw old pain in his eyes. We survived because one man, a rancher named Jacobson, saw my mother struggling and offered her work at his ranch house. He gave me a job too, teaching me the cattle business from the ground up. He didn't have to do any of that. We weren't his responsibility, but he helped us anyway, and it changed our lives. My mother lived another 8 years in dignity and comfort before she passed, and I've had a career and a future I never would have had otherwise. Mr. Jacobson, your employer, Zelda said, understanding dawning. The same man. The same man. He's older now, semi-retired and letting his sons run most of the operation, but he's still the best man I've ever known. Owen's expression was earnest. He taught me that if you have the ability to help someone, you should. Not because you'll get something out of it, but because it's the right thing to do. So when I heard about your situation, I saw a chance to pay forward the kindness that was shown to my family. That's all there is to it. Zelda felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just do good work, take care of yourself, and if you ever need help, ask for it. He finished his coffee and signaled for more. Now tell me about yourself, Mrs. Chen said you grew up here in Globe. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily. Zelda found herself telling Owen about her childhood, about her mother who had died when she was young and her father who had done his best, but never quite managed to make ends meet. She talked about learning to sew from her grandmother, about the satisfaction she found in taking something broken and making it whole again. Owen listened with genuine interest, asking questions and sharing his own stories of growing up on the Circle J, of learning to ride and rope and survive in the harsh Arizona territory. He had a gift for storytelling, making even mundane ranch chores sound like adventures, and Zelda found herself laughing more than she had in months. I should get back to work, she finally said reluctantly, noticing the dining room had emptied around them. I have a mountain of mending waiting. And I should get back to the ranch before someone notices I've been gone all morning. Owen stood and helped her with her chair, leaving coins on the table to cover their meal and a generous tip. I'll come back on Saturday to check on your progress and bring payment. Will that work? That's perfect. Zelda pulled her shawl around her shoulders, suddenly aware of how public their breakfast had been. She would undoubtedly be the subject of gossip by evening, but somehow she found she did not care as much as she should. Owen walked her back to her shack, leading his horse and pack mule behind them. At her door, he paused and said, I enjoyed this morning. Would you mind if I took you to breakfast again sometime? Zelda's heart jumped, but she kept her voice steady. I'd like that. Good. His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. Then I'll see you Saturday. Take care of yourself, Zelda. She watched him ride away, his figure growing smaller against the vast Arizona landscape, and realized she was already looking forward to Saturday with an intensity that had nothing to do with the promised payment. The next few days passed in a blur of needle and thread. Zelda worked from dawn until well past dark, her fingers moving automatically through the familiar motions of mending while her mind wandered to Owen Jameson. She had learned to be wary of men, especially handsome cowboys with easy smiles, but Owen seemed different. His kindness felt genuine, his interest real rather than calculated. On Friday afternoon, 3 cowboys from the Circle J arrived with hammers and lumber, just as Owen had promised. They were weathered men in their 30s and 40s, polite and businesslike as they set about repairing her porch and fixing the worst of the leaks in her roof. They worked quickly and efficiently, refusing her offers of water or payment. "Owen said you try to pay us," one of them said with a grin. "He told us to tell you that friends help friends, and payment is having our clothes mended proper so we don't look like ragamuffins in town. Owen talks about me to the other ranch hands." The thought sent a flutter through her stomach. The cowboy's grin widened. "Owen talks about you more than he probably should, miss. But then, we haven't seen him this interested in a lady in the 5 years he's been at the Circle J, so I reckon we're all rooting for him." Zelda did not know what to say to that, so she retreated inside to her mending, her cheeks burning but her heart singing. Saturday arrived bright and clear, and Zelda found herself taking unusual care with her appearance. She washed her face and hands, pinned her dark blonde hair more carefully than usual, and even put on her better dress, a faded blue calico that had seen better days but was still presentable. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that this was a business arrangement and nothing more, but she could not quite suppress the excitement bubbling in her chest. Owen arrived just before noon, and Zelda's breath caught when she saw him. He had cleaned up since Wednesday, his hair freshly washed and his jaw cleanly shaven. He wore a newer shirt that she recognized as one she had mended, the blue fabric bringing out his eyes in a way that made her pulse quicken. "I finished about half the items," she said, leading him inside to show him the neatly folded stacks of mended clothes, each tied with string and labeled according to his list. "The rest should be ready by next week." Owen examined the work carefully, checking seams and buttons with an attention to detail that impressed her. "This is exceptional work, Zelda. The men are going to be thrilled." He pulled out another leather pouch and counted out 5 more silver dollars plus an additional 2. "The extra is for the work you've already completed. It's more than we agreed on, I know, but it's worth it." "Owen, that's too much. It's what's fair. You're not just mending clothes, you're keeping our entire outfit looking respectable. That's worth paying for." He tucked the pouch away and met her eyes. "Now, I was hoping I could convince you to have lunch with me. There's a little cantina on the edge of town that makes the best enchiladas you've ever tasted, and I have the whole afternoon free." Zelda knew she should be cautious, should maintain some distance and propriety, but she found herself nodding before her practical side could object. "I'd love to." The cantina was small and cheerful, run by a Mexican family who greeted Owen like an old friend. The food was indeed delicious, spicy and rich and nothing like the bland fare Zelda usually managed to cook for herself. They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing as easily as it had at their first breakfast together. "Tell me about the Circle J," Zelda said, watching Owen's face light up as he talked about the ranch he clearly loved. "What's it like living out there? It's hard work, no denying that. We're up before dawn and often working until after dark, especially during roundup or branding season. But there's something satisfying about it, about working with the land and the animals, about being part of something bigger than yourself." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's not a life for everyone. Some men hate the isolation, the lack of towns and entertainment. But for those of us who love it, there's nowhere we'd rather be. Do you ever want your own ranch? Someday, maybe. Mr. Jacobson has promised me a piece of land as part of my wages, accumulating every year." In another 5 or 10 years, I'll have enough saved and enough land to start my own operation, something small but mine. His eyes grew distant, seeing a future Zelda could only imagine. I'd want it to be a place where people feel safe and valued, where hard work is rewarded and families can thrive. Like Mr. Jacobson built, but my own version of it. That's a beautiful dream. Zelda meant it sincerely. She had given up on dreams months ago, focusing purely on survival, but listening to Owen made her remember what it felt like to hope for something beyond tomorrow. What about you? Owen leaned forward, his attention focused entirely on her. What are your dreams, Zelda? Beyond just getting by, what do you want? No one had asked her that in years. Zelda sat back, considering the question seriously. I'd like to have a real shop someday, not just a shack, but an actual dressmaking and tailoring business. I'd like to create beautiful things, not just mend what's broken. I'd like to have enough money that I never have to worry about where my next meal is coming from, and maybe even enough to help other people the way you're helping me now. Those are good dreams. Achievable ones too, with time and hard work. Owen reached across the table and took her hand, the gesture so natural that Zelda did not even think to pull away. I think you could do anything you set your mind to, Zelda Harmon. You've got strength and talent and determination. The rest is just a matter of opportunity. His hand was warm and calloused, the hand of a working man, and Zelda found herself acutely aware of every point of contact between them. You have a lot of faith in someone you barely know. I'm a good judge of character. Comes from working with horses and cattle. They can't lie, so you learn to read what's really there beneath the surface. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, sending shivers up her arm. And what I see in you is someone worth knowing better. They stayed at the cantina until mid-afternoon, neither wanting the day to end. Finally, Owen walked her home, his horse trailing behind them on a loose rein. At her door, he hesitated, clearly wanting to say something but searching for the right words. I should tell you, he finally said, that the other men have been teasing me something fierce about how much time I've been spending in town. They say I'm inventing excuses to see you, and they're not entirely wrong. Zelda's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Are they? Not entirely wrong, Owen smiled, that devastating smile that made her knees weak. They're completely right. The truth is, Zelda, I brought you the ranch's Mending because you needed the work, but I keep coming back because I want to see you. I can't stop thinking about you, and I find myself making up reasons to ride into Globe on the chance I might run into you. Oh. It was all Zelda could manage, her mind reeling. I know it's fast, and I know you probably have reservations about getting involved with a cowboy who spends most of his time in the middle of nowhere, but I'd like to court you proper if you're willing. Take you to dinners, maybe show you the ranch, spend time getting to know each other better. He took her hand again, his expression earnest and hopeful. What do you say? Zelda knew she should be sensible. She barely knew this man, and getting her heart broken was the last thing she needed when she was finally getting back on her feet. But when she looked into Owen's eyes, she saw something that made all her reservations melt away. Genuine caring, sincere interest, and the promise of something real. Yes, she said simply. I'd like that very much. Owen's answering smile could have lit up the entire Arizona territory. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than anything Zelda had experienced before. Then I'll see you Wednesday evening. There's a church social, and I'd be honored to escort you. After he left, Zelda floated inside her shack and collapsed into her mending chair, pressing her hands to her flushed cheeks. She had said yes to courting a cowboy. Her practical side screamed that she was being reckless, but her heart sang with possibilities she had thought lost forever. The next weeks fell into a pattern that felt like a dream. Owen rode into Globe twice a week, always with a wagon load of mending and always with an invitation to spend time together. He took her to church socials and town dances, to quiet dinners at the cantina and afternoon rides into the surrounding hills. He was attentive without being possessive, respectful of her boundaries while making it clear that his interest was serious. The people of Globe watched their courtship with varying degrees of approval and disapproval, but Zelda found she cared less and less about their opinions. For the first time since her father's death, she was happy, truly happy, and nothing anyone said could diminish that. Owen introduced her to other people from the Circle J, including Mr. Jacobson himself, a silver-haired man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He approved of Owen's choice. He told Zelda bluntly, because she had the look of someone who would not break under pressure, and ranch life required strength. His daughter Emma became an unexpected friend. She was a few years older than Zelda, cheerful and practical, with her father's kind eyes and her mother's sharp wit. She started coming into town regularly to help with the mountain of mending, and the two women worked side by side, their conversations ranging from the trivial to the profound. "Owen's in love with you, you know," Emma said one afternoon in early November, her needle flying through a torn sleeve. "I've never seen my brother so besotted." Zelda's hand stilled on the shirt she was mending. "Your brother?" "Well, not by blood, but close enough. Owen's been part of our family since he was 12. We grew up together, fought like siblings, and I know him better than almost anyone." Emma looked up with a mischievous smile. "He talks about you constantly. It's nauseating, really." Zelda said this, Zelda did that. Did you see how beautiful Zelda looked in the blue dress? The men in the bunkhouse are threatening to gag him. "He talks about me like that." Zelda could feel her cheeks heating. "Like you hung the moon and stars personally." "It's actually quite sweet, though I'd never tell him that." Emma set down her mending and grew more serious. "But I wanted to tell you something, Zelda. Owen's a good man, probably the best I know. If you're serious about him, you'll never regret it. He'll treat you right, work hard to provide for you, and love you with everything he has. But if you're not serious, if this is just a passing fancy or a way to secure your financial situation, please be honest with him now. He's had his heart broken before, and I don't want to see it happen again." The protective edge in Emma's voice made Zelda respect her even more. "I'm serious," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to be, didn't plan on falling for anyone, especially not so quickly. But Owen is different. He makes me feel safe and valued and like maybe I deserve good things after all." Emma's expression softened. "Then I'm glad he found you, and for what it's worth, I think you'll make an excellent addition to our family whenever that time comes." The words stayed with Zelda long after Emma left. She had not let herself think that far ahead, had not dared to imagine a future that included marriage and family and permanence. But now, the possibility bloomed in her mind like a desert flower after rain, beautiful and full of promise. Owen proposed in December, on a cold, clear evening when the stars seemed close enough to touch. He had taken her on a ride outside town to a high overlook where you could see for miles in every direction, the desert landscape painted silver by moonlight. "I know it hasn't been long," he said, dismounting and helping her down from her horse. "I know people will say we're rushing, that we should wait longer and be more sensible. But Zelda, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you see beauty in things other people overlook. I love how hard you work and how you never complain even when you have every right to. I love the way you laugh and the way you look at me like I'm someone worth knowing." He took both her hands in his, and Zelda saw her own emotions reflected in his eyes. "I don't have much to offer you right now. I'm just a ranch hand with some land claims and savings. But I swear to you that I will work every day to build us a life worth living, to give you the security and happiness you deserve. I'll build you that dress shop you dream about if it takes me 20 years. I'll make sure you never go hungry or cold or afraid again." Tears were streaming down Zelda's face, but she was smiling so hard her cheeks hurt. "Owen, I know I should have a ring, should do this proper in your parlor with flowers and fancy speeches, but I couldn't wait another day without asking you." He dropped to one knee right there on the rocky overlook, his face upturned to hers. "Zelda Harmon, will you marry me? Will you take a chance on a cowboy who loves you more than life itself?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob, joyful and certain. "Yes, Owen, of course yes." He surged to his feet and caught her in his arms, spinning her around until she was breathless and laughing. When he finally set her down, he kissed her for the first time, a kiss that was gentle and fierce and full of promise. Zelda melted into him, feeling like all the broken pieces of her life had finally come together into something whole and right. They were married 2 weeks later in Globe's small church, with Emma as maid of honor and half the Circle J Ranch in attendance. Mr. Jacobson gave her away, his weathered hand steady on her arm as he walked her down the aisle. Zelda wore a dress she had made herself from fabric Owen had bought her, simple cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had never felt more beautiful. Owen looked dazed when she appeared in the church doorway, his eyes going bright with emotion. When she reached his side, he took her hand and held it like he would never let go. They exchanged vows in voices that shook with feeling, promising to love and cherish each other through all the challenges life might bring. The wedding breakfast was held at the hotel, a rowdy celebration full of laughter and music, and more food than Zelda had seen in her entire life. The cowboys from the Circle J were enthusiastic if slightly scandalous guests, telling embarrassing stories about Owen that made him blush and Zelda laugh until her sides hurt. "You're taking on quite a responsibility, Mrs. Jameson," Mr. Jacobson told her during the celebration, his eyes twinkling. "Owen's a good man, but he's also stubborn as a mule and tends to work himself half to death if someone doesn't make him rest. I'm counting on you to keep him sensible." "I'll do my best," Zelda promised, savoring her new name. Mrs. Jameson. It felt right in a way nothing had in a long time. They spent their wedding night in the hotel's best room, and Zelda discovered that Owen was as gentle and considerate a husband as he had been a suitor. He made her feel cherished and desired, and when she woke the next morning in his arms, she felt like the luckiest woman alive. They moved into a small cabin on the Circle J property that the ranch provided for married hands, a sturdy structure with 2 rooms and a real cookstove. It was not large, but after her leaky shack in Globe, it felt like a palace. Owen had already moved in their few possessions and even surprised her with new curtains Emma had helped him make. "It's not much yet," he said, watching anxiously for her reaction. "But we can add on as we need to, and eventually we'll build our own place on my land claim. For now, though, is it enough?" Zelda turned in a slow circle, taking in the solid walls, the clean floor, the small touches that showed Owen had tried to make it welcoming. "It's perfect," she said, meaning it. "It's perfect because it's ours." Life on the Circle J was different from anything Zelda had experienced. The isolation she had been warned about did not bother her. She found the quiet peace of the ranch soothing after the noise and judgment of Globe. She continued her mending work, but now she also helped with other ranch tasks, learning to cook for the occasional bunkhouse meals, to tend the vegetable garden, and even to ride well enough to accompany Owen on shorter trips around the property. The other ranch hands treated her with a respect that warmed her heart, many of them bringing their mending directly to her cabin now with sheepish grins and thanks. She established what amounted to a small business right there on the ranch, mending not just for the Circle J but for neighboring operations as well. "You're going to need help soon," Owen observed one evening, watching her work by lamplight. "Word spreading about your skills. I heard 2 other ranches asking about your services." "I can manage," Zelda said, but she knew he was right. The work was becoming more than one person could handle, even with Emma's occasional help. "What if you trained someone?" Owen suggested. "There are a couple of young women in Globe who could probably use the work and the skills. You could teach them your techniques, and they could help with the simpler repairs while you handle the more complex work." It was a good idea, and within a month Zelda had 2 apprentices, both daughters of struggling families in Globe who were grateful for the opportunity to learn a trade. She found she enjoyed teaching, taking satisfaction in watching the young women's skills improve week by week. The business grew steadily through the winter and into the spring. By the time summer arrived, Zelda had enough saved that Owen suggested they start building on his land claim, a beautiful piece of property near a reliable water source about 5 miles from the main ranch house. They spent weekends riding out to the site, planning where the house would go, where they would build corrals and outbuildings. Owen's eyes would light up as he described his vision for their future ranch, a modest operation that would gradually grow as they could afford to buy cattle and equipment. "We'll call it the ZO Ranch," he said one afternoon as they sat on the hillside overlooking their land. "For Zelda and Owen, our initials together. What do you think?" Zelda leaned against his shoulder, watching the sun paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "I think it's perfect. I think all of this is perfect." In July, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but had not said anything until she was certain. When she finally told Owen, he reacted exactly as she had hoped, sweeping her into a careful embrace and burying his face in her hair as he struggled with emotion. "A baby," he kept repeating, wonder in his voice. "We're going to have a baby. In February, according to the doctor in Globe. Around Valentine's Day, he thinks." Zelda pulled back to see his face, loving the joy written there. "Are you happy?" Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. Owen cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away tears she had not realized she was shedding. "You've given me everything I never knew I wanted, Zelda. A home, a family, a future worth working for. I'm the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy progressed smoothly despite Zelda's initial worries. Emma became a constant presence, visiting regularly to check on her and sharing stories of her own children's births that were both comforting and terrifying. The ranch women, wives of other hands, welcomed Zelda into their circle completely now that she was carrying Owen's child, sharing advice and practical wisdom about motherhood in the harsh Arizona climate. Owen became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more and work less despite her protests that she was pregnant, not dying. He took over most of the household chores and even learned to cook basic meals so she would not have to stand over the hot stove during the blazing summer months. "You're going to drive me mad with all this fussing," Zelda complained one evening as Owen tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "Then I'll drive you mad. I'm not taking any chances with you or the baby." He took the wet shirts from her hands and hung them himself, looking so determined that Zelda had to laugh. They moved into their new house in October, a simple but solid structure Owen had built with help from the other ranch hands. It had 3 rooms now with space to add more later, real glass windows, and a covered porch that offered shade from the relentless sun. Zelda cried when she saw it complete. overwhelmed by the reality of having a real home, something that was truly hers. She set up her sewing space in one corner of the main room, organizing her supplies in the shelving Owen had built specifically for her. The apprentices came out from Globe twice a week now, and together they kept up with the steady stream of mending and even took on some custom sewing projects for ranch wives who wanted new dresses or children's clothes. "This is starting to look like a real business," Emma observed on one of her visits, watching the three women work efficiently together. "Have you thought about expanding into Globe, maybe opening that shop you always wanted?" "Not yet. Maybe after the baby comes and I see how much time I have." Zelda ran a hand over her swelling belly, still amazed by the life growing inside her. "But someday, yes. Owen and I talk about it sometimes, about building a dress shop in Globe that would give work to more women who need it. You two are going to change this territory," Emma said with confidence. "Mark my words. In 10 years, the ZO Ranch will be one of the most successful operations in Arizona, and your dress shop will be the finest between Tucson and Phoenix." Zelda laughed at the prediction, but secretly hoped Emma was right. The baby came on a cold February night with sleet hammering against the windows. Owen rode through the storm to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Patterson from Globe, while Emma stayed with Zelda and timed the contractions. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Zelda feared she would not survive it. But Emma held her hand and talked her through the pain, and when Owen returned with the midwife, his presence gave her strength to keep going. Their son was born just before dawn, small and red and perfect. Owen cried when the midwife placed the baby in his arms, tears streaming down his weathered face as he stared at his child with absolute wonder. "Hello there, little man," he whispered. "I'm your papa, and I promise you're going to have the best life I can possibly give you." They named him James after Owen's father, with the middle name Thomas after Zelda's. Little James Jameson had his father's dark hair and what would probably become his mother's blue eyes. And from the moment he arrived, he wrapped both his parents completely around his tiny fingers. The first months of motherhood were exhausting but joyful. Zelda learned to function on minimal sleep, to nurse while doing mending with one hand, to soothe a crying baby while managing her apprentices. Owen was a devoted father, taking the baby whenever he could to give Zelda a break, walking the floor at night when James fussed, changing diapers without complaint. "You're better at this than I expected," Zelda teased one afternoon, watching Owen expertly swaddle their son. "I helped raise 3 younger cousins before I came to the Circle J. I know my way around a baby." Owen settled James in his cradle and came to slip his arms around Zelda's waist. "Besides, this is my son. I want to know him, be part of his life from the very beginning." Too many fathers leave all the baby work to their wives and then wonder why their children don't know them. It was one of the many things Zelda loved about Owen, his willingness to be a full partner in their life together. He never dismissed her work as unimportant or acted like his contribution to the family was more valuable than hers. They were a team, and he made sure she always knew it. The ZO Ranch grew slowly but steadily over the next few years. Owen saved every penny he could, investing in cattle and horses, gradually building their herd. Zelda's business continued to thrive, and she was finally able to open a small shop in Globe, employing 4 women full-time and providing steady income that supplemented the ranch earnings. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah who arrived 2 years after James, and another son named Michael 3 years after that. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Owen adding rooms and even a separate workshop for Zelda's sewing business. By 1890, The Zio Ranch ran 200 head of cattle and 30 horses. A modest operation by territory standards, but profitable enough to provide a comfortable life. Owen had earned a reputation as an honest rancher who treated his hands fairly and kept his word. And buyers sought out Zio cattle knowing they were getting quality stock. Zelda's dress shop, Harmon's Fine Sewing, became the premier dressmaking establishment in Globe. She employed 8 women now, all of whom she had trained personally, and they produced everything from simple work clothes to elaborate ball gowns. The shop had become more than just a business. It was a lifeline for women in difficult circumstances, a place where they could learn skills and earn their own money and build independence. You remember when I brought you that first load of mending? Owen asked one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky. Their children played in the yard, their laughter floating on the warm air. How could I forget? I thought you were either crazy or trying to take advantage of me. Zelda leaned her head on his shoulder, still fitting perfectly against him after 8 years of marriage. And now look at us. A ranch, a business, 3 beautiful children, and more happiness than I ever thought possible. Owen pressed a kiss to her hair. Do you ever regret it? Saying yes to that crazy cowboy who showed up at your door with a sack of clothes? Not for one single second. Zelda turned to look at him, seeing silver starting to thread through his dark hair, new lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. He was even more handsome now than he had been that first night, weathered by time and work into someone solid and real. You gave me back my life, Owen. More than that, you gave me a life worth living. We gave each other that, Owen corrected gently. I was just going through the motions before I met you, working hard but not really living. You taught me what it means to build something meaningful, to have a real home and family. Everything good in my life started the night I knocked on your door. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children and their land and the vast Arizona sky. Zelda thought about the girl she had been 8 years ago, hungry and desperate and nearly broken by grief and hardship. She had been mending clothes for Pennies, barely surviving, when Owen Jameson rode into her life with a sack of laundry and an open heart. He had brought her more than work that night. He had brought her hope, friendship, love, and eventually a family and a future she had never dared dream possible. The whole town's laundry had become the foundation for an empire of sorts, a business that employed women and gave them independence, that helped families and strengthened the community. But more importantly, Owen had brought her himself, a man who saw her worth when she could not see it, who loved her through the difficult times and celebrated with her through the good ones, who built their life together piece by piece with patience and dedication, and unwavering faith in their future. I love you, Zelda said simply, the words inadequate but heartfelt, more than I can ever express. I know. Owen pulled her closer, his arm strong and steady around her shoulders. I love you too, more than words can say. Thank you for taking a chance on me, Zelda. Thank you for saying yes. As the sun sank below the horizon and the children's voices grew quieter with approaching bedtime, Zelda felt a profound sense of gratitude and contentment. Her life had not turned out anything like she had expected when her father died and left her alone. It had turned out infinitely better, richer, fuller, blessed with love and purpose and belonging. She was no longer the lonely seamstress mending clothes for pennies in a leaky shack. She was Zelda Jameson, wife, mother, business owner, rancher. She had helped build something lasting and good, not just for herself and Owen but for their children and the wider community. And it all started because one kind cowboy saw someone struggling and decided to help, asking nothing in return except the chance to know her. The years continued to roll by with the steady rhythm of ranch life. By 1895, The ZO Ranch had become one of the most respected operations in the territory. Owen's hard work and fair dealing had paid off, and they now ran 500 head of cattle and had built a reputation for quality stock that reached as far as California. The ranch employed 6 full-time hands plus seasonal workers during Roundup, and Owen treated all of them with the same fairness Mr. Jacobson had shown him. James, now 13, worked alongside his father whenever he was not in school, learning the cattle business the way Owen had learned it. He had his father's way with horses and his mother's sharp mind for business, and Owen often joked that their son would probably end up running an empire someday. Sarah at 11 was quieter than her brother, but she had inherited Zelda's talent with a needle and had already started designing her own clothes. She spent hours at the shop in Globe, learning every aspect of the business and showing a natural aptitude for both sewing and management. Zelda suspected her daughter would take over the dress shop eventually, probably expanding it beyond anything Zelda had envisioned. Michael at 8 was the wild card, more interested in books and learning than cattle or sewing. He talked about becoming a lawyer or a doctor, ambitions that would have seemed impossible in the hardscrabble Arizona territory of Zelda's youth, but were becoming more feasible as the territory modernized and grew. Owen and Zelda encouraged all 3 children to pursue their interests, saving money for their educations and exposing them to opportunities their parents never had. Harmon's fine sewing had expanded twice, now occupying a large building on Globe's Main Street with 12 employees and a waiting list for custom work. Zelda had published a small book of sewing patterns and techniques that sold throughout the territory, bringing in additional income and cementing her reputation as an expert in her field. She split her time between the ranch and the shop, managing the business side while training others to handle the day-to-day operations. "You've built something remarkable," Emma told her one afternoon as they toured the expanded shop together. Emma's children were grown now, and she had become Zelda's business partner, handling the financial management while Zelda focused on design and quality control. "When I think about where you started, what you've accomplished, it takes my breath away." "We've built something remarkable," Zelda corrected. "I could never have done this without you and Owen and all the women who took a chance on working here." "True, but it started with you. Your vision, your determination, your willingness to work harder than anyone else." Emma straightened a bolt of fabric, her expression thoughtful. "You know what I think the most impressive part is? You never forgot what it was like to struggle. Every woman you hire, you see yourself in them. You give them the same chance Owen gave you, and they transform their lives because of it." Zelda felt her eyes grow damp. "I remember what it felt like to be desperate, to feel like the world had turned its back on me. If I can prevent even one woman from feeling that way, everything we have built is worth it." The shop had indeed become a haven for women in difficult circumstances. Zelda made a point of hiring widows, single mothers, and women escaping bad situations, providing not just work, but training, fair wages, and a supportive community. Several of her former employees had gone on to open their own businesses, and Zelda took pride in their success as much as her own. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Zelda with a trip to San Francisco, their first real vacation since their wedding. They left the children with Emma and Mr. Jacobson, who was now in his 80s but still sharp as a tack, and took the train west to the coast. Zelda had never seen the ocean before, and when they stood on the beach watching waves crash against the shore, she cried at the sheer, overwhelming beauty of it. Owen held her close, sharing her wonder and delight as they explored the city together. They visited museums and theaters, ate at fancy restaurants, and stayed in a hotel so luxurious it seemed like a dream. "We should do this more often," Owen said as they walked along the waterfront one evening. "Take time away from the ranch and the business. Remember what it's like to just be Owen and Zelda instead of Mr. and Mrs. Jameson with all our responsibilities." "I'd like that." Zelda squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses that 15 years of ranch work had engraved into his palm. "Though I have to admit, I miss the children. And the ranch. Is it strange that I am already looking forward to going home? Not strange at all. We've built a good life there, one worth missing when we're away." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her, the setting sun painting him in shades of gold. "I want you to know something, Zelda. These past 15 years have been the best of my life. Every morning I wake up grateful that you took a chance on me, that you let me into your life and your heart. You've made me happier than I ever imagined possible." "Owen." Zelda felt tears threatening again. "You're going to make me cry, and I've already cried twice today just from being overwhelmed by the ocean." He laughed and pulled her close, right there on the public waterfront with people walking past. "Then cry. Cry because you're happy, because we're happy, because we beat all the odds and built something beautiful together. We earned these tears." They returned to Arizona renewed and refreshed, ready to dive back into their busy lives. The children had grown taller in just 2 weeks, or so it seemed to Zelda, and the ranch had survived fine without them, proof that the systems they had built were solid. In 1898, Sarah turned 14 and asked to take over more responsibility at the dress shop. Zelda agreed, impressed by her daughter's maturity and business sense. Within months, Sarah had reorganized the inventory system and introduced new efficiency measures that increased profits by 20%. She had Owen's work ethic and Zelda's creative eye, a combination that promised great things for the future. James at 16 was already as good a rancher as men twice his age. He had Owen's calm way with animals and a natural leadership ability that made the other hands respect him despite his youth. Owen began seriously discussing succession planning, knowing that in a few years James would be ready to take on more significant responsibilities. Michael continued to be their scholarly child, devouring every book he could get his hands on and corresponding with teachers at universities back east. He wanted to go to college, a bold ambition but one Zelda and Owen fully supported. They had the money now to make it possible, and they wanted all their children to have opportunities to pursue their dreams. The 20th century arrived with celebrations throughout Globe and the surrounding territory. Arizona still was not a state, but statehood seemed increasingly likely, and the region was transforming from wild frontier into something more settled and civilized. The railroad had brought connections to the wider world, telegraph lines carried news instantly, and modern conveniences were becoming more common even in remote ranches. The ZO Ranch had electric lights now, powered by a small generator Owen had installed. The house had been expanded again, now a sprawling structure with 8 rooms, indoor plumbing, and modern appliances that made Zelda's work easier. They had come a long way from the tiny cabin where they had started their married life, though Zelda still kept that original cabin on the property as a reminder of where they began. Harmon's fine sewing had become a regional destination, with customers coming from as far as New Mexico and California for custom work. Sarah had taken over daily management, freeing Zelda to focus on design and training. They now employed 20 women and had opened a second location in Tucson, managed by one of Zelda's first apprentices. "Sometimes I can't believe this is my life," Zelda confessed to Owen one evening as they sat on their porch, a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage. When I think about that girl mending clothes in that terrible shack, barely surviving, it seems like a different person entirely." "It was a different person," Owen said thoughtfully. "That girl was strong and talented but beaten down by circumstances. The woman you are now has had the chance to grow and thrive and show the world what she is capable of. But the strength was always there, Zelda. I saw it that first night, even when you could not see it yourself. You saw a lot that night." Zelda smiled at the memory. "You saw potential where I only saw failure. You saw someone worth investing in when I thought I had nothing left to offer. I saw the woman I wanted to spend my life with, even if I did not realize it quite that quickly." Owen reached for her hand, their fingers interlocking automatically after 20 years of practice. "And I was right. You're the best decision I ever made." In 1902, Michael left for Harvard University, the first member of either of their families to attend college. Zelda cried for days after he left, missing her youngest desperately, but bursting with pride at his accomplishments. He wrote regularly, long letters describing his classes and his new experiences, and Zelda saved every one of them in a special box. James married that same year, choosing a sensible young woman named Margaret, whose family ran a neighboring ranch. The wedding was enormous, with seemingly everyone in the territory attending to celebrate the union of two prominent ranching families. Owen walked beside James to the altar, the two of them looking so similar that several guests commented on it. Zelda watched her son become a husband and felt the bittersweet pride of seeing her children become adults. Sarah continued to expand the dress shop empire, opening a third location and beginning to wholesale to other stores throughout the territory. At 18, she was already a formidable businesswoman, respected by men twice her age. She seemed in no hurry to marry, focused instead on building her portion of the family enterprise. The ZO Ranch now ran over 1,000 head of cattle and had expanded to include several sections of additional land. Owen had achieved his dream of building a successful ranch, and then exceeded it. He employed 15 full-time hands, and the operation was profitable enough that they had begun diversifying into horses, and even some experimental farming in the irrigated sections near the creek. "We should think about retirement," Emma suggested one afternoon. She and her husband had stepped back from active management of their ranch, letting their sons run things while they traveled and enjoyed their later years. "You two have been working yourselves to death for 20 years. Time to let the next generation take over." "I'm not ready to retire," Owen protested, but Zelda saw the thoughtful look in his eyes. He was 44 now, still strong and healthy, but feeling the effects of decades of hard labor. His back ached in the mornings, and long days in the saddle left him stiff and sore in ways they had not when he was younger. "Not retire completely," Emma clarified, "but step back. Let James manage the day-to-day operations while you focus on the bigger picture. Same with you, Zelda. Let Sarah run the shops while you do what you love, the designing and teaching. You have built something sustainable. Now trust it to keep running without you micromanaging every detail." It was good advice, and over the next year, Owen and Zelda gradually transitioned more responsibility to their children. James proved more than capable of running the ranch, bringing fresh ideas while respecting the foundations his parents had built. Sarah took the dress shop business to new heights, expanding into mail-order catalogs and establishing Harmon's as a recognized brand throughout the Southwest. With more free time, Owen and Zelda traveled more, visiting Michael at Harvard and exploring parts of the country they had never seen. They went to New York City and Washington, D.C., to the mountains of Colorado and the plains of Kansas. Each trip reminded them of how much the world had changed since they met, how the wild frontier of their youth was transforming into something more connected and modern. But they always came home to Arizona, to their ranch and their community, where their roots ran deep, and their contributions had made a real difference. The children they had helped educate, the women they had employed, the families their ranch had supported, these were their true legacy, more valuable than land or money or business success. In 1907, Arizona was well on its way to statehood, and Globe had transformed from a rough mining town into a thriving community with schools, churches, hospitals, and businesses. Zelda was asked to serve on the town council, representing the business community, and she accepted the position with Owen's full support. She used her influence to push for better working conditions, education opportunities, and support services for struggling families, always remembering what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. Their 25th wedding anniversary was celebrated with a grand party at the ranch, attended by what seemed like half the territory. Friends and family came from hundreds of miles away to celebrate with them, sharing stories and memories of the past quarter century. Mr. Jacobson, now 92 and still sharp despite his advanced age, gave a toast that had everyone in tears. 25 years ago, a young cowboy I had known since he was a boy came to me with questions about a young woman in town who needed help, he began, his voice still strong. I told him the same thing I had told him many times over the years. If you can help someone, do it. Not because you will get something out of it, but because it is the right thing to do. Owen took that advice and brought some mending work to a struggling seamstress, thinking he was just helping her survive. He paused, looking around at the assembled crowd. But what he actually did was start a chain reaction that has transformed this entire community. The business Zelda built has provided work and independence for hundreds of women. The ranch they built together has supported countless families. Their children are leaders in their own right, continuing to build on the foundation their parents laid. And the love they share, the partnership they have modeled, has shown all of us what marriage should look like at its best. His eyes found Owen and Zelda in the crowd. You two have done more good in this world than you probably realize. You have lived the values I tried to teach, and you have taught them to the next generation. I'm proud to have played a small part in bringing you together, and I'm grateful I have lived long enough to see what you built. There was not a dry eye in the house when he finished. Zelda embraced the old man who had been like a father to Owen, thanking him for his wisdom and kindness. Owen shook his hand with tears streaming down his face, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children had gone home to their own families, Owen and Zelda sat on their porch in the darkness, holding hands and listening to the night sounds of the ranch. 25 years, Owen said softly. A quarter of a century. How is that even possible? I don't know, but I would not change a single day of it. Zelda leaned her head on his shoulder. Well, maybe the day Sarah broke her arm falling off that horse, that day could have gone differently. Owen laughed, the sound warm in the darkness. Or the day James decided to bring home that snake he found. That was not one of our better moments as parents. Or the winter Michael had pneumonia and we thought we might lose him. Zelda's voice grew more serious. We've had scary moments and difficult times mixed in with all the joy. That's life, though. The good and the bad all mixed together, and you have to take it all if you want the good parts. Owen lifted her hand and kissed it, a gesture he had repeated thousands of times over their marriage, but which still made her heart flutter. I'm grateful for every moment, Zelda. Even the hard ones, because we faced them together. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who knew each other so well that words were often unnecessary. Zelda thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, from that desperate night when Owen knocked on her door to this beautiful life they had built together. It had not always been easy, but it had been worth every challenge, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, sensing the direction of her thoughts the way he always could. "I'm thinking about that first night when you showed up with your sack of laundry. I was so suspicious of you, so certain you must have some ulterior motive." Zelda smiled in the darkness. "I never imagined that simple act of kindness would lead to all of this." "I had ulterior motives," Owen admitted. "Even then, before I really knew you, I was attracted to you. You were beautiful and fierce and obviously strong despite your circumstances. But mostly I just wanted to help because it was the right thing to do, and everything else grew from that foundation." "The best things usually do," Zelda said softly, "grow from simple acts of kindness and genuine care for other people. You taught me that, Owen. You taught me that people can be good, that not everyone has an angle, that sometimes help comes without strings attached." "You taught me what love really looks like," Owen countered. "What partnership means, what it is to build something lasting with another person. I knew ranch work and cattle and horses, but you taught me how to build a life worth living." They continued to sit together as the stars wheeled overhead, and the night grew deep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but tonight was for reflection and gratitude. They had beaten the odds, survived the struggles, and built something beautiful in the harsh Arizona desert. Their love had grown and deepened over 25 years, from that initial spark of attraction to a bond so strong nothing could break it. The years continued to pass, bringing changes but also continuity. Mr. Jacobson passed away peacefully in 1909 at the age of 94, and the entire territory mourned the loss of one of its founding fathers. Owen gave the eulogy, speaking eloquently about the man who had saved his family and taught him what it meant to live with integrity and generosity. Zelda wept beside him, grateful that they had been able to show Mr. Jacobson what his kindness had grown into before he died. Michael graduated from Harvard and then attended law school, eventually returning to Arizona to practice law and work toward statehood. He married a fellow lawyer, a brilliant woman named Elizabeth who shared his passion for justice and reform. Together, they became a formidable team, fighting for workers' rights and fair treatment for all Arizona residents. James and Margaret had 4 children who grew up running wild on the ZO Ranch, learning the cattle business from their grandfather and great-uncle. The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, expanding carefully and sustainably, always prioritizing quality over quantity. Sarah finally married at 28, choosing a businessman from San Francisco who appreciated her intelligence and ambition. She continued to run the Harmon's fine sewing empire, now with locations in 6 cities and a thriving mail-order business that reached customers across the country. She had far exceeded Zelda's original vision, creating something that provided employment and opportunity for hundreds of women. In 1912, Arizona finally achieved statehood, and the celebration was enormous. Michael had played a significant role in the statehood movement, and the family attended the ceremony in Phoenix with pride. Zelda wept again, this time from joy at seeing the wild territory of her youth become an official part of the United States. Owen retired from active ranch management at 54, finally giving in to his aching back and tired bones. He and Zelda spent more time traveling, visiting their children and grandchildren, exploring the country that had changed so much during their lifetimes. But they always returned to the ranch, to the house they had built, and the land they loved. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1912, They renewed their vows in a simple ceremony at the ranch, surrounded by family and close friends. They spoke the same promises they had made 3 decades earlier, but with the weight of experience behind them now, understanding fully what those vows meant and cost and gave. "I promise to love you for the rest of my life," Owen said, his voice rough with emotion, his hair now more silver than dark. "To stand beside you in good times and bad, to support your dreams and share your burdens. You are my best friend, my partner, my everything. I thank God every day that you answered your door that night and gave me a chance." "I promise to love you with all that I am," Zelda responded, looking at the man who had saved her and been saved by her in return. "To cherish what we have built together, to honor the life we share. You saw me when I was invisible, valued me when I felt worthless, loved me when I thought I was unlovable. Everything good in my life flows from that first act of kindness, and I will spend the rest of my days being grateful for you." They kissed as their children and grandchildren cheered, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something that would last long after they were gone. The business continued to grow and thrive under the next generation's management. The ranch expanded to include cattle operations across 3 states, managed by James and his sons. The dress shop empire became a nationwide brand, with Sarah opening locations in major cities and even beginning to export to Europe. Michael became a prominent lawyer and eventually a judge, known for his fairness and commitment to justice. Owen and Zelda settled into a comfortable retirement, enjoying their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, traveling when the spirit moved them, and spending quiet evenings on their porch watching the sunsets they had shared for over 3 decades. They had both slowed down physically, their bodies bearing the marks of long lives of hard work, but their minds remained sharp and their love as strong as ever. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to your door that night?" Owen asked one evening in 1915 as they sat in their usual spot on the porch. "If I had listened to the voice that said it was too late to visit a lady alone, or if you had refused to open the door." Zelda considered the question seriously. "I think we would have found each other eventually. Not that I believe in fate exactly, but I think 2 people who are meant to be together find their way to each other somehow. Maybe, but I'm glad we didn't have to wait any longer than we did. Every day with you has been a gift, Zelda. Even the hard days, even the times we fought or struggled or faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. All of it was worth it because we were together. We built a good life," Zelda said, looking out at the land they had shaped and the legacy they had created. "Better than I ever dreamed possible when I was that girl mending clothes for Pennies, wondering how I would survive another week." "We built a great life," Owen corrected. "And the best part is that it will continue after we're gone. Our children and grandchildren will carry on what we started, making it even better. That's true immortality, I think. Not living forever yourself, but creating something that will outlast you." They sat in peaceful silence as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, the desert cooling around them as night approached. The ranch was quiet, the day's work done, and in that moment everything felt perfect and complete. As the stars began to appear, Owen squeezed Zelda's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For answering the door that night, for taking a chance on a cowboy with a sack of laundry, for building this life with me." His voice grew thick with emotion. "For being the best partner, wife, mother, and friend anyone could ask for. For making every day an adventure and every challenge bearable. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. For everything." Zelda felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, grateful tears. "You saved my life that night, Owen Jameson." not just from poverty and desperation, but from a half-life of just surviving instead of truly living. You taught me what it means to build something meaningful, to love and be loved, to be part of something bigger than myself. So thank you for seeing me when I needed to be seen, for helping me when I needed help, and for loving me every day since. They stayed on the porch long after full dark, holding hands and counting stars. Two people who had found each other in the harsh Arizona territory and built an empire of love, family, and community. Their story had started with a simple act of kindness, a cowboy bringing laundry to a desperate seamstress, and it had grown into something extraordinary. The mending she had done for Pennies had become a thriving business empire. The whole town's laundry he had brought her had become the foundation for a partnership that changed countless lives. And the more he had brought, the friendship and love and unwavering support, had become a marriage that exemplified what commitment and partnership could achieve. As they finally rose to go inside, Owen put his arm around Zelda's waist, and she leaned into him, their bodies fitting together as perfectly as they had for over 30 years. They walked into their home together, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring, secure in the knowledge that whatever came, they would face it side by side, just as they always had. Their story was one of transformation and hope, proving that sometimes the smallest kindnesses can change everything. That one person reaching out to help another can create ripples that spread far beyond what anyone could imagine. From desperate poverty to comfortable prosperity, from loneliness to a house full of family, from merely surviving to truly thriving, they had walked the journey together, and neither would have changed a single step of it. The Wild West they had known was gone now, transformed into a modern state with cars and electricity, and all the conveniences of the 20th century. But the values that had built their life together, hard work, integrity, kindness, and unwavering commitment, those remained timeless and true, passed down to their children and grandchildren who would carry them into the future. And if someone asked either of them what the secret was to their happiness, to the remarkable life they had built together, they would answer simply. It started with seeing someone who needed help and choosing to help them, with no expectation of return. Everything else, all the love and success and joy that followed, grew from that single seed of kindness planted on a dark night in Globe, Arizona in 1883, when a cowboy brought a sack of laundry to a desperate seamstress and changed both their lives forever.